So first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here with you. And I have to tell you, I have to confess that actually this topic was the trigger of my interest in Holocaust studies, in Korczak, and more general in Jewish history. The depiction of the last march that I saw in the movie of Janusz, of Andrzej Wajda, probably known by you, was the first moment when I decided, was the moment when I decided that I'm going to devote my time and finally life to researching not only this topic, but the topics that are connected with it.
You were 12.
Sorry, I was 12 at that time. Sorry. But I would love to say it was not a long time ago, but it was. No. So coming back to the title of my presentation, as you can see, we've got two questions in here. Whom we trust and in whom we trust. So actually, whom we believe, which testimonies we treat as reliable testimonies. And the second question is, in whom? What image, what picture of Korczak we would like to see, and what picture is depicted, is given to us. So just to start, I would like to tell you a few words about Janusz Korczak, whom you know probably, but just to put him into the context. So Janusz Korczak is widely known as a writer, medical doctor, educator, and the director of the Jewish orphanage called the Home of Orphans. By the way, Janusz Korczak is his not real name, as you probably all know. He was called Henryk Goldschmidt. This institution, the Home of Orphans, was established prior to the Great War by the Association Help for the Orphans and was designed to help Jewish children in need. It was very well known because of its unique way of operating, based on democracy. It helped children to regain agency and self-confidence. With the outbreak of the Second World War, the institution, as a Jewish one, was affected by the new Nazi order, which meant, for example, the inevitable transfer to the area of a newly established ghetto. Finally, as many other institutions of social help, they got deported to the death camp in Treblinka. The deportations in Warsaw Ghetto started on the 23rd of July, 1942, and already then the charges of some social help institutions were taken to their last journey to the east, as it was claimed. At the beginning of August 1942, most of the institutions that were supporting children were also the subject of deportation. One of them was the Home of Orphans, directed by Janusz Korczak, and I have to underline this fact, his closest co-worker, Stefania Wilczyńska. They were working as a team, they were working partners. He was the director, but actually she was the person who was holding the whole institution in very strong hand. So the last march to the Umschlagplatz for many years was shrouded in legend. And according to this legend that was based on contradictory testimonies for many years, Korczak has served as a symbol of heroism. Many people claimed that they had the chance to see him marching alone without Wilczyńska, without any other educators, in front of a group of the children. Some of them were also telling that they heard them singing, even in the close vicinity of the Umschlagplatz. This image was presented very often and in different contexts. Apparently it was useful, especially after the Second World War. Korczak, who became a legend, not of his own volition actually, covered the history of the Warsaw Ghetto caregivers and institutions of social help. Nevertheless, those testimonies very often differed in details, starting from the very basic one like the date of the deportation or the route from the building of the Home of Orphans. I will show you the map later on. And yes, it was located in the southern, the orphanage at the moment of deportation was located in the southern part of the ghetto, and the Umschlagplatz was located in the northern part of the ghetto. So they had to cross those streets somehow, and I was trying to track how the route looked like. And of course, then after the behavior of the children and Korczak in the Umschlagplatz. And in my presentation, I would like to point out the most extreme points of view and then show the most possible course of events, based both on the testimonies that are read critically and on some external sources that verified and sometimes falsified some of the stories told by so-called witnesses. So that's the agenda that I would like to follow, and I hope that I will do it. So first of all, I would like to tell you a few words about Korczak in the Warsaw Ghetto, but only a few. Then after, I will focus on the date of the deportation, or the dates of the deportation, because it was not certain for many years. Then after, I would like to focus on the march, the route of the march through the Warsaw Ghetto. Then after a moment in the Umschlagplatz, and at the end, I will conclude. So Korczak in the Warsaw Ghetto, that's, I have to see it. So as I told you, the initial building of the orphanage of Janusz Korczak was not located in the Warsaw Ghetto, in the area of the future Warsaw Ghetto. It was located here, on Krochmalna Street, Krochmalna 92. By the way, the building is still there, so if you are in Warsaw, you are very invited to go and see it. There is still an orphanage. So that was not within the walls of the Warsaw Ghetto. They had to relocate somehow. And they relocated here, not far away, to Chłodna 33. They exchanged the building with another institution. That was the School of Trade for Boys. So the boys from the school came to Krochmalna, and the children, the orphans from Krochmalna, went there. And they stayed here in this very area almost 1 year, but as the borders of the ghetto were shrinking, they had to move once more to their last location here. Nowadays, there is Palace of Culture and Science. When you are in Warsaw, you will see that there is also a monument devoted to Korczak, but the bigger thing, of course, is the Palace of Culture and Science. And let me follow the agenda. So the date, or the dates of deportation. And already at the beginning, we have a big problem with the very basic findings, namely the date of the orphanage, the date of deportation of the Janusz Korczak's orphanage. In the memoirs, the date of 5th of August appears most often, but it's followed immediately by the date of 6th, then the 12th, and then even the 3rd or 4th of August. The latter can be rejected immediately, as the last record in the Korczak's diary is dated 4th of August, and the 3rd is also can be rejected already, which completely exclude the possibility of moving the Home of Orphans a day earlier. The date of August the 12th is interesting, but can be explained in the following way. The person who saw the parade, or who knew that the march occurred, knew that it was Wednesday at the beginning of August. So this Wednesday, the 12th of August, serves as an argument for the Wednesday of the 5th of August. So the most important thing that can be taken from this testimony is the fact of the day of the week. It seems more likely to register the circumstances, like the name of the week or the weather, or possibly some accompanying event than a specific date. And at this point, we can assume that this event took place either on the 5th of August, or the 6th of August. Here it was already too late, so we've got those two dates. And I was struggling with those two dates a very long time, and I was comparing the testimonies, and it was impossible for me to get the proper conclusions. But what I did, I compared the state of weather with those testimonies, and by comparing those two sources, those two types of data, it was evident that the deportation occurred on the 5th of August. There is another thing that somehow supports my hypothesis. It's the fact that the wife of Michał Wróblewski, who was employed in the Korczak's orphanage, she was also engaged somehow in the activities of this institution. She recalls that it happened on her birthday, and she was born on the 5th of August. So, you remember rather the moment of your birthday, that was a special day. Moreover, there is another testimony that again supports the thing connected with the weather, with the temperature, because the 5th of August was a very warm day, and those data I got from the Institute of Meteorology and Water Management in Warsaw. And the 6th of August was a rainy day, and no one remembers the rain. So again we've got here. And another thing is the issue of water. And another thing is the issue of water, not from the heavens, but in the bottles, actually. Emanuel Ringelblum mentioned in his chronicle, and it can be also somehow related to this Wednesday heat, that Korczak supplied his children with a few barrels of water for the trip. So, I mean, it could have, the reason could have been the weather also. And Adolf Berman, the head of Centos, wrote after the war that Janusz Korczak orphanage was brought to Umschlagplatz together with other orphanages from that area, from the area of the small ghetto, so-called small ghetto. One of the first dormitories deported was Janusz Korczak's orphanage. During the cruel blockade of a number of streets in the so-called small ghetto, children were expelled from their temporary premises, and together with many thousands of people were driven to Umschlagplatz. On the same day, a model boarding house for boys from Twarda Street, with its dedicated managers Dąbrowski and Sternfeld, and the head of a girls' shelter at Śliska Street 28, with its distinguished manager Broniatowska, they were all taken away. The authors of probably the best known book about the Warsaw Ghetto combined the date of August the 5th with the removal of the orphanages from Twarda Street and Śliska 28, those two indicated by Berman, and if we correlate this fact with the memoirs of Franciszek Ząbecki, who was employed on the railway station, he was the railway worker in Treblinka, it turns out that Korczak could have been let out together with them. Ząbecki wrote, "It was August 7th or 8th, the first week of the murders in Treblinka. The transports with disabled persons stopped at the station all night long. In the transport from Warsaw there were several wagons loaded with young people. There were boys. And at the station, along the tracks, I heard a hushed male voice, and quote in quote, 'Mr. Railwayman, help me get out of here. Tell me which way to go further.' And at the same time, he told me that a teacher and a friend of him, a great educator and writer from Warsaw, it fits perfectly to Korczak, whom he had known for a long time, with whom Catholics, this not necessarily, had been praying together for several weeks, because, as the educator said, all people have in common that only God." So we've got this person who is a great educator, who is a well-known writer, who is deported to Treblinka with those boys and other orphanages on the 5th of August. So again, we've got this date again somehow supported. It does not mean, we cannot say for sure which date is correct, but in my opinion, and of course we can discuss it, but the August the 5th is much more likely. The facts that speak about it are less undeniable. I'm not speaking that they are certain. They are less undeniable than those that point the August the 6th. And then after, we've got another part of the presentation and another part of the image of the march. So the date, the 5th or the 6th, but rather the 5th. But now, let me just focus on those three things. The march itself, the image of the march, how it looked like, how long did it take, and what was the atmosphere, what was the image of it. So we don't know much, actually. We know only, for sure we know three points. The location of the orphanage, the starting point, the bridge over the Chłodna Street, the only place that you can move from the small ghetto, you can cross the so-called, that was not the border, but you can move from the small ghetto to the big ghetto, that was the Chłodna Street, and the bridge over the street. And the last point is the Umschlagplatz here. So for sure we've got those three things. Then after, when we take the testimonies, or when we put the points from the testimonies that I gathered, collected, not all of them, but here in those testimonies people precisely point out the places from where they were observing, they were seeing Korczak marching with the children. And we've got 3 more points. We've got the Grzybowski Plac, which is here. We've got the cross-section of Leszno Street and Żelazna Street. We've got the cross-section of Zamenhofa and Gęsia. So we've got, 6 points, which is not a lot, but it can help us somehow. From here we've got 2 testimonies. One of Luba Blum-Bielicka, who was the director of the School for Nurses. She was the director of the School of Nurses, and she got deported the same day. She was supposed to be deported that day, and she met Korczak here while they were stopping and waiting for other people for other charges from other institutions. Here, another person, another medical, so to say, personnel, that was Adina Bladyszwajger, the doctor from the hospital, from the branch of the Jewish Children's Hospital. She was standing here and she was seeing Korczak parading more or less in here. And here we've got another thing, Władka Mit, she was hiding. She was hiding at that moment here on the cross-section, and she saw Korczak marching. We have another testimony from here, which is actually very unlikely. You all know the diary of Mary Berg. So Mary Berg was at that moment in the Pawiak prison. She was waiting to be sent to America as an American citizen. And she wrote in her diary that she saw Korczak marching here. She could have seen someone, not necessarily Korczak. Dzielna, that's the street. On Dzielna Street there were 4 orphanages. Dzielna 15, Dzielna 60, Dzielna 39, Dzielna 61 and Dzielna 67. So she saw someone, somehow and someday, but for sure that was not Korczak. She associated this memoir with the legend, with the story that she has heard. And while combining those testimonies and using a little bit of logic, we can somehow trace the route of the last march of Korczak. They start here. They can go only this way to the Plac Grzybowski. They stay here for a moment. They meet Luba Blum-Bielicka and the nurses here. Then after they go further, probably rather this way, and this way. Here, I'm not sure. Then they cross the bridge, they go over the bridge, go further, that's the only way. And here, that's again the only way, and that's again the only way to the north. Here, I'm not sure. Here, Władka Mit saw him. And then they moved directly to the Umschlagplatz, and from Dzika Street they entered the area here. So that's the most probable route of the march. And I was trying to be even more logical and make it the most simple possible, and I decided that maybe in order just not to stray in the streets, that they took the most straight, and here maybe straight way to the Umschlagplatz. That's my proposal, but well, of course we cannot check it and verify it easily. And how long did it take? I checked with Google Maps how many kilometers and how long would it take for me to walk this way, the proposed route of march, and it is about 3 kilometers. And it can be covered, within less than an hour. If you are an adult, you are healthy, you walk fast, you are not distracted, and so on and so forth. But here the situation was completely different. It was a group of people, a group of children, they were stopping, the streets were blocked, the weather was, as we already discussed, was very unfavorable, so to say. So in my opinion, it could have taken like 3 to 4 hours even. And then after, the most important thing, the atmosphere, maybe not the most important, but the very important thing. Because while speaking about the last march of Janusz Korczak, it is very often said that they were singing, they were waving the flag, and Korczak was holding or carrying at least 2 children on his arms. Well, he was 64 at that time, he was depressed already, he had some very serious health problems, so I would not expect that he was carrying 2 children all the way long. Secondly, the flag. They had a flag, and we know it for sure, but recently, very recently, I read in another testimony that each of the child was waving his or her own flag. So you see how the gossip, or how this little information dispersed and moved or transferred into another thing. And were they singing? It's possible that they could have been singing, as we know for sure that during the transfer to the ghetto in the 1940, that was completely different situation, but they were singing a very beautiful sailor's song, which starts with the words, kiedy burza huczy wkoło nas, when the storm is all around us, we'll go and we'll be strong. So, well. And in the Umschlagplatz, I've got 2 pictures from the Umschlagplatz. Of course, we don't have pictures of Korczak from there. And there are again 2 stories that someone tried to release them from the Umschlagplatz. And there are again 2 versions. First of all, that was the Judenrat, that was the Jewish community, and this is much more likely. The second one is the version that is depicted in another movie. I started with the movie and I will finish with the movie. The German one, which is called Sie sind frei, Dr. Korczak. That was the movie directed by Alexander Ford. And the whole plot says that the German came to him and told him, yes, I've read your books, they are amazing, you can stay, the children will go. Of course it's impossible. Of course it's impossible, and Jerzy Lewiński, who was the policeman at that time and who was in the Umschlagplatz, says that no German never proposed such a thing to anyone. Children were unproductive element, they were not useful. So they were easily sent. But actually, one of the orphanages from the Warsaw Ghetto was released from the Umschlagplatz. That was the orphanage directed by Maria Rolat. That was the orphanage for the elder girls. And they were indeed working for the Germans, working for the occupants, and actually it was possible for a moment to prolong their life. And now I'd like to come back to the initial questions. Whom we trust and in whom we trust. What happened that day? How did Korczak act? How did the co-workers behave? How the children behaved? And I think that the most probable course of event was that it happened on the 5th of August. The route we discussed. Parts of them we are certain, parts of them we have to assess somehow or choose a path. And of course we have to admit that it could have looked differently on different stages, as it took like 4 hours, approximately 4 hours. Maybe at the beginning they were marching and singing, but at the end I would not expect that they were full of energy. Then after, what about Korczak? As I told you, he was already 64, in a very bad physical and mental also condition. I would not expect that he was the leader of this group. I would rather say, I would rather expect that was Wilczyńska, who was his closest co-worker, who was trying to keep the order. And to sum up, I would like to ask some questions and leave you with those questions. In whom we want to trust? In which image of Korczak we would like to believe? And what is more appealing, and why this picture, the legendary picture of Korczak and children singing, was very appealing right after the war, and why it's easier to accept the testimonies that make us a little bit comforted, that we feel that maybe it was not so bad. Yeah. And why? And that's the question that actually supports my dissertation that I'm writing currently. Why Korczak is the one and the only? Why he became the symbol and he really covered like the dozens of people who did completely the same. If we have time, I will tell you another story, not now, maybe during the session of questions and answers, about one educator, what she did and how she persuaded the rest of the co-workers to stay with their charges. Thank you for your attention.